Empires of the Ascended is finally here, and I've been so excited to bring you this video. Very simply, this video will look at every single new champion and a deck that could go well with it. Let's face it, the new expansion comes and we kind of have no idea really where to start with deck building, so hopefully this gives you a good starting point. This is Best New Decks Patch 2.3. This video has been done in collaboration with BomberTV. Please remember to like and subscribe and turn on the bell notifications too. So let's dive in. This is Jarvan Garen Midrange. It's basically a mono Demacia deck with 2 copies of the Harrowing Inn from the Shadow Isles. It's your standard midrange deck with lots of cards costing 1 to 4 mana, with every follower costing 4 or less. It's quite an expensive deck with 7 epic cards in total. Jarvan's very interesting. He not only synergizes with elites, but also with scouts, taking advantage of the free attack when he enters the board, and catalysm he generates. With this deck we explore the elite synergies as we basically get quite a lot from this archetype. With a very solid curve, starting off with Penitent Squire or Citria of Cloudfield. Citria has been around since beta and is your standard 2/2 elite card. Penitent Squire is a new Shurima expansion card and creates a Tattered Banner when summoned if you behold an elite. Tattered Banner is a 1 mana burst spell that has the effect of granting an ally Challenger the next time you summon a unit this turn. Challenger is a staple for any midrange deck, and this can lead to some really optimal trades early on to help curve. Then you'll be looking at Battlesmith and Grand Plaza on turn 3. Battlesmith grants elites when you summon them 1/1, which is fantastic in a deck like this full of elites, and Grand Plaza you'll be very familiar with from the Targon expansion. This grants an ally 1 attack and challenger on the round it's summoned. Even though it was recently nerfed, it's still a fantastic card in this deck and will generate huge value. Later on we can constantly rally thanks to Garen or Jarvan casting a Catalysm on Grizzled Ranger, which will grant us an attack token, putting a lot of pressure on our opponent that may already be enough to basically finish the game. So you combine this with all the buffing cards in this deck and the challenges that you'll have, so you can basically choose the fights you want and you can basically midrange your opponent to death. If your opponent survives this, we have some huge finishes as well. The Harrowing is there to recover from a losing position by allowing you to resummon a lot of elites to attack. These units are basically going to be ephemeral and going to die on strike, so you can follow this up by casting For the Fallen for basically a close to free refill of your board again. If your opponent is not already dead, basically For the Fallen reduces its cost each time you summon an ally, and Harrowing will contribute to this cost reduction greatly, so you're basically going to have 2 huge attempts to basically wipe out your opponent. I can't see you not winning off this. This is Kindred They Who Endure, and it's basically a mono Shadow Isles deck with 3 copies of They Who Endure. For some reason a huge number of cards in this deck cost 2 mana, and the reason for this being is so many of your cheap minions can die quickly and cheaply early on to fuel They Who Endure's effect. This deck is very budget with no epic cards needed. We all know the They Who Endure archetype, but now we've got some much needed more support and a new champion to aid this archetype. So Kindred. This deck will naturally summon a lot of units, and it will take advantage of the aggressive nature of sacrificing allies to get some benefits, and now we've got a champion which incentivizes that playstyle, giving us even greater value generation tool in the mid game. Kindred is the latest champion to be added to the Shadow Isles. Has quick attack, costs 5 mana, and the first time you slay a unit each round, it marks a weakest enemy and kills them at the end of the round. Slay is simply when you kill an opposing unit, and Kindred levels up when you slay 2 marked units, and then starts gaining 2/2 every time you slay further opposing units. The idea of this deck is simple: be aggressive, swarm your opponent with little units in the early game, and try and win off that. If your opponent manages to survive until late game, hit him with a very big They Who Endure, and a cherry on top, Atrocity. To make it easier to get your They Who Endure and constantly refill your hand, as you're going to be obviously playing lots of small units which die quickly, we run refill drawing cards. So these are cards like Glimpse Beyond, Stalking Shadows, and a new Spirit Leech card. Spirit Leech kills an ally on play to draw 2 cards, so overall this is a very powerful deck. that's now got even stronger. Lissandra Control features cards mainly from the Flayord, but with a quarter of the cards from the Shadow Isles. Every Shadow Isles card costs 7 or more mana, so these are going to be used for a strong control focused finish. The deck has a very high number of spells, sitting at 18 in total, and this deck is actually quite expensive with 10 epic cards. This is a usual Shadow Isles Flayord control archetype, but with a twist. This deck rewards turns spent surviving, and not for the usual reason of surviving long enough to gain mana gems. So when I say it rewards time spent surviving, I'm talking about the countdowns on cards like Frozen Thralls from the landmark itself, which in turn can summon an 8 mana Frostguard Thrall with Overwhelm. Linked to this waiting favour will link well with Lissandra, who needs an 8+ mana allies to be summoned, and Drakelorn Inquisitor, who can accelerate the countdown of Frozen Thrall if they are less than 4 in their kind of countdown number. Both of these cards summon Frozen Thrall, so there's some nice combos to be had here. Drakelorn Inquisitor is very important as it allows some crazy scenarios where basically you have an 8/8 with Overwhelm on turn 6 for free. It's absolutely insane. Other than that, we also have the usual tools to control the board like Avalanche and the Runation. And we also have the new additions like Blighted Ravine, which is a very strong card. Blighted Ravine heals your Nexus for 4 when summoned, and it has a countdown 1 effect that deals 2 to everything. Finally, we have the big boys at the end, either Frostguard Thralls and Trundle, another card which works well with cards costing 8 or more mana, so there's some nice combos here as well. You also have Commander Ledros, who can halve your opponent's Nexus health, and this is obviously a very common appearance in control decks, and you've also got the Watcher from Lissandra. The Watcher in particular is involved in a pretty sick combo involving the 8 mana cost Spectral Matron, so you can play her summoning the Watcher, and you can immediately discount the Watcher in the hand to 0 mana, so that you can play also a second one in a turn, so just in case one was not enough. So you basically have 2 chances to obliterate your opponent's deck. So overall this is a very interesting twist to the evergreen control strategy involving Flayord and Shadow Isles. This is Nasus Renekton Mono Shurima and features 40 cards from Shurima. The deck actually has a very low average mana cost, with all but 3 copies of Nasus costing 4 or less mana. The deck has an equal mix of followers and spells, and it's actually quite budget with only 1 epic card, which is the Buried Sandisk. The idea of this deck is to restore the Sun Disk and get some crazy level up, with Renekton and Nasus, your 2 Ascended champions. The 2 rivals work well together in this Mono Shurima deck. The Sun Disk is a new landmark card which you can draw 1 at the start of the game. You basically draw it instantly if you've got a Mono Shurima deck like this one. It has a countdown of 25, and a champion level up advances this count by 10. This is the first time we have level 3 champions, and you can quickly advance the Sun Disk by leveling up level 1 Renekton and Nasus. Nasus needs to deal 12+ damage, and Nasus needs to strike for 10+ damage. Once you finally level them up, the level 3 champions can only be reached by restoring the Sun Disk. So after this criteria is met, you can finally access level 3 Renekton and Nasus. We have cards which benefit from being Mono Shurima, like the Sun Disk of course, and cards like Golden Ambassador, which is very important in this deck to tutor your champions out, as basically all of the deck is built around getting them out. Golden Ambassador has the Allegiance effect to draw a champion and grant it 2/2. Obviously Allegiance only activates when the next card in your deck is from the same region, and obviously all 40 here are from Shurima, so it's always going to activate. As both Nasus and Renekton levels up requirement benefit from having higher damage, this synergy is perfect. The rest of the cards also synergize well with this concept. There are cards that help you draw more, like Runeterra's Path and Preservarium. Runeterra's Path allows you to draw 1 card, and if you've slain a unit this round, drain 2 from the enemy Nexus. This drain helps you survive long enough to level up Nasus and Renekton. Preservarium allows you to draw 1 card when summoned and draws another card when countdown 2 is reached. Other cards also help you level up your champions, giving vulnerable to both make Renekton able to challenge things, activating his effect, or to slay enemy units for Nasus, so this deck can generate a lot of value in the form of crazy champions. So if they don't have the proper tools to basically counter this strategy, your opponent's going to have a super hard time. This is Sivir LeBlanc Aggro and features cards primarily from Nasus, with 9 Shurima cards thrown in for good measure. It's a very follower heavy deck with 24 followers in total. It's a typical aggro deck with every card costing 5 or less mana, with the vast majority costing either 2 or 4 mana. It's quite an expensive deck with 9 epic cards in total. Sivir and LeBlanc share the same playstyle and both have packages with the unique keyword Reputation. Reputation activates if you have units strike for 5 or more damage 4 different times in a game. That's why I run a lot of units in this deck with 5+ attack, or others with 3 attack to be buffed later by cards such as Weapon Hilt or Voice of the Risen. Weapon Hilt increases damage of a unit by 2 and reforges, and Voice of the Risen is a new epic card that gives allies +2 damage if you've leveled up a champion. All the cards in this deck are about damage, so you should level up LeBlanc and Sivir very quick. LeBlanc creates a mirror image every time she sees you deal 15 damage, so this summons an exact ephemeral copy of an ally with 5+ power, basically helping you flood the board with damage. Having a leveled up Sivir is fantastic. She gains spell shield and gives all attacking allies her keywords, so if you give her Overwhelm, thanks to the Blade Fragments package or K to the arm, you're going to have a very powerful win condition here, and this has actually happened so quickly that it's pretty scary. So if you want to climb the ranks quick, this is definitely a fun way to do it. This is Taliyah Aphelios and it features cards from Targon and Shurima. It's extremely landmark heavy with 12 in total, and as a result it does not rely much on followers and it only contains 7 in total. It's a bit of a mid-range style deck and has a lot of cards with low mana costs with a huge percentage costing 1 or 2 mana. It's very budget and no epic cards are needed. The idea behind this deck is to take advantage of Taliyah's ability and copy the best landmark that we currently have in the game. Of course, I'm talking about the Veiled Temple. When Taliyah is summoned, she creates an exact copy of an allied landmark. The Veiled Temple has the effect each round the first time you play 2 other cards, you refill 2 mana and grant the strongest ally 1/1. This is a very good match for the landmark since we're forced to go into Targon, the region of the Veiled Temple, and Shurima, so this is where the second champion comes into play, Aphelios, who also works around buffing cards. After this concept, this deck basically builds itself. We have the landmark synergy in the form of the Shaped Stone and Ravenavelled Earth. Shaped Stone gives an ally 1/1 this round, and 3/1 if you've already summoned a landmark this game. This should be dead easy with the amount of landmarks in this deck. Unravelled Earth summons 2 Rolling Stone landmarks and allows you to draw 1 card. Roiled Stones has the effect which destroys a landmark when an enemy is summoned and granted vulnerable. Taliyah levels up when you summon 5+ landmarks. When she levels up, on attack she deals 2 to the blocker, and if it's dead or gone, deals 2 to the enemy nexus. If you have a landmark, which you're basically going to have in most cases, she does this 2 more times for absolutely insane value. We also have loads of Nightfall triggers for Aphelios, like Lunari Dustbringer in particular, also other very new cards that are cheap, like Exhaust. This is a very powerful card. Exhaust is basically a focus spell which gives an enemy -2 damage and vulnerable this round, and it only costs 1 mana. So this deck is mainly a mid-range one, but particularly slow in early game, but against Control in particular, it doesn't really punish the lack of early development, so this deck could be absolutely devastating. So whilst it suffers a bit more to aggro, Control is where you're going to thrive here, and I have a feel the meta is going to go quite Control with this new expansion. So overall a very value orientated deck for players who can wait and be rewarded for their patience. This is Renekton Azir Aggro Control, and this is a mono Shurima deck. It contains only a small number of spells with 9 in total. The average mana cost in this deck is strange, with most cards either costing 1 or 4 mana, and it's a medium budget deck with 4 epic cards in total. This probably has to be the most interesting deck concept of them all, as a combination of aggro and control, and this is quite unique. The idea of this deck is if you're playing aggressively pretty much all the time, and it synergizes nicely with the Sand Soldiers. You go wide and buff your whole board thanks to cards like Inspiring Marshal or Voice of the Risen. In the control matchup, or generally if you fail to kill your opponent fast, there's a long-term plan of leveling up Renekton to the 3rd level, or more importantly, Azir, so you can access the Emperor's deck, which basically translates to you winning the game. In particular, you don't really need to play Buried Sundisk on turn 1, as a big part of the countdown is leveling up 2 champions rather than the actual countdown itself. So for example, you could play a 1-drop on turn 1, especially if you have the attack token, then play Buried Sundisk on turn 2, whenever you'd be floating the 1 mana of course, you'd have 2 mana on turn 2. So basically you're an aggro deck in the early game, and wasting your turn 1 could basically put you at a massive disadvantage. Lots of your cards in the deck revolve around your other champions, so Golden Ambassador, who has the Allegiance effect to draw a champion and grant it 2/2, or Voice of the Risen again, who gives all your allies 2 damage if you've leveled up a champion. So this is really a deck for all kind of playstyles, aggressive at the start, insane value at the end. I think you're going to really enjoy this one. And there we go guys, this video has covered every new champion introduced this expansion, so I hope it gives you a good starting point on the types of decks that you can use in the Shurima expansion now that it's here. I certainly can't wait to try every new single champion and basically witness their amazing level up animations, which are absolutely stunning. What's your favourite new champion? I would love to hear in the comments. Up next is Top 10 Decks Patch 2.3, taking a look at the 10 highest win rates in the new meta once it finally settles. See you there. The data presented here is analysed by BomberTV using MOBA Analytics. He's a Masters tier player with a background in game theory and game design. He took the most winning archetypes into Master tier, excluding ones with small play rates, analysed their key properties on why they are so strong. Link to his channel is in a pinned comment and in the card above. I've recently set up an Instagram account, @LawGuides, and I'll be doing a giveaway shortly. Please follow this account for see posts about new videos, and will be in a chance of winning this giveaway. Please remember to like and subscribe and turn on bell notifications too. See you next time guys.